me just begin by asking one question. When you hear of the word politics, what is the first word, only one word, first word that comes to your mind? I'm gonna give you 5 seconds. First word, one word.
Justice.
Justice?
Power.
Power. How about some young folks? What's the first word? What came to your mind? Money? I'm sorry?
Men.
Men. Very good. What did you say? You said men too?
No, I was just repeating the word.
Okay.
Debate.
Election.
Elections.
Debate.
Debate. So,
Selma.
what was your?
Selma.
Summons.
So,
So when I was at the University of Virginia, a professor had a conference with about 100 elected officials like these, and we went through this process. The one first word that we should think about when it comes to politics is actually ethics. Ethics. The word ethos goes from Greece. Every day it's about character and a decision you have to make of determining what's right and wrong every single day. Our wonderful representative touched on this. Every day, the more local you are, your decision even matters more because you're at the ground level and your decision making will touch people's lives every single day. I made a decision coming here and not going to a conference in Puerto Rico with my colleagues. That was an ethical decision for me because I'm hoping one of you, the young people in the audience, will one day can be the next governor of Massachusetts, can be the next United States president. I'm hoping that I can pass on the baton. Those are, every day as elected officials, we have to make those decisions, whether from scheduling or voting or asking a donor for something. Every day is an ethical decision for us and it has an impact all around us. But in order for us to be reflective and be ethical, and this is where I come back to impart my main message to young people today, and which will summarize in 4 words. I will summarize in 4 words for you that you can take away from today. Is you must find your intrinsic motivation. Find your intrinsic motivation. 4 words. What does that mean? Intrinsic motivation. I think our professor touched on that as well briefly. Let's go back and talk about what extrinsic motivation is. Extrinsic motivation is when you're constantly thinking about feeling validated. You know, when you're humiliated by a bad test, instead of approaching it as an opportunity to grow, to learn, to find purpose. You know, when you are constantly comparing yourself to your neighbor, or trying to impress your parents, or trying to get to Harvard because someone else told you that's how you're going to be validated as a human being. That's an extrinsic motivation. You get to Harvard because you want to rule the world. You want to be the next CEO of Goldman Sachs. You want to be the president of the United States. You have a deep purpose of getting to a place like this. Not because it's not a title, it's another notch, you know, on your belt. But that's the difference between intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. I don't think my slides up, but I think he was so captivated by my speech. He was. So this is very important to me because in my line of work, there's way too many extrinsically motivated people who run for office, people who are in positions of power, people abuse that power, and they're not in it for the right reasons. And Asian Americans are actually, Korean Americans in particular, are in a prime spot to change that narrative. And I'm gonna bring back, I think the professor actually mentioned the testing policy in New York City. In New York City, how many of you heard about Stuyvesant and wrong science? You know about Stuyvesant and wrong science? You went to Stuyvesant?
I went to Staten Island Tech.
Okay. Oh, you went to?
Staten Island Tech.
Okay, good. So you went to a specialized high school?
Yeah.
You took the SHSATs? Right. So New York City, Boston used to have this, but New York City is the only place in the entire country where there's a one-day, one-test policy to get into the best high schools in the city of New York. This was instituted by law 27 years ago. And as a result, Asian Americans are doing much better than their counterparts. About 70% of stipends are Asian Americans right now. 5 years ago, I stood with various stakeholders to take a look at reforming this test. Because I still believe one test could not possibly measure, the character, the ability of a person to actually perform. There's got to be a lot of other stuff you have to look at. This year, however, I stood against it because the way that it was presented by the political institutions, the mayor, a number of elected officials came out and racialized the entire process. It was about there's just way too many Asians in Stuyvesant, and we have to racially change this, and the test is the main reason why it's not diverse enough. They made it seem like the racial segregation in New York City was caused by this test. There is no even a correlation. The causation and correlation is K-12 education, early education, after school programming, fixing the pipelines. It doesn't matter what the test is, what it is. Black and Hispanic students should be prepared to advance to the next level. Instead of focusing on that, they blamed the test and they started vilifying Asian Americans. So I stood firmly against it. But this is actually a very valuable lesson because when in the middle of this fight, I saw a lot of ugliness in our community as well. I saw a lot of Asian parents hyper-racialized, calling my office and saying, how dare you, this is 5 years ago, how dare you're gonna allow my Chinese child be in a classroom with more Black and Hispanic kids. And I've heard some of the worst, racist things out of our own community as well. And this is a very, again, important point because that kind of short-sightedness by our community is because many of us are still externally and extrinsically motivated. The intrinsic drive here, the purpose that we should all share, is that in the island of Manhattan alone, there's enough money to provide every single freaking child in this entire world a quality education. That's the reality. But why are we fighting for lousy few seats and pushing a couple of Asian kids away and pitting Black and Hispanic and Asian kids against each other? That's not right. That is the intrinsic drive that Asian parents and Asian families should come to as a conclusion. How do we work with the Black and Hispanic community so we can expand the pie where every single child, doesn't matter where you come from, good test taker, good writer, if you want a quality education, you're gonna have a seat. But instead, we're just shuffling the seats and taking more seats away. And I'm gonna conclude by getting to this very complicated chart. I'm not sure if my high school students, junior high school students here, what is it? How old are you?
I'm 16.
You're 16. 16 the youngest here? Yeah? Okay. All right, so I think you should get this chart. You can't see the whole thing, but this is actually, it also touches on what our representative was saying about an energy economy and a regenerative economy. When we come together and find intrinsic drive, we will realize that there's enough wealth and power around this world for every single human being to live comfortably, eat well, be well educated. It doesn't have to be a win-lose dynamic. It can be right now a win-win dynamic for everyone. And that is what a regenerative economic looks like. That is what the recycling, the upcycling, the energy economy that was represented to is about. But why can't we get there? And this is where the people in power will play the minority myth, the stereotype, to continue to keep young people on that treadmill, especially from the Asian American communities, on that treadmill. You're so smart. Well, you're doing so well. You're not like the rest of the other minorities or the Blacks. You are amazing at what you do. Just keep on running on that treadmill. Keep on continuing the paradigm that we created for you. That's not leadership. You have to wake up and realize that you're in a position to be a leader, meaning that you can disrupt that treadmill. You can wake up and say, I'm gonna be a leader. I don't have to follow this treadmill, and and I'm gonna fight for a future, an economy that serves every single human being on this planet. That is what the circulation chart, the green quadrant is about. Unfortunately, every politician I know is stuck in the blue quadrants, where they're either focused on public policy, public law, which is very important, social justice, more inequalities are all very important issues, but those are symptoms of a larger problem that's causing those things, and that is an unfair, a debt-driven economy that's not working. Or we're technocrats, big tech, defenders of Amazon. Like the governor of New York wants to spend $100 million to bring Amazon to New York. Why? But the public, are very deceived by these notions, but don't get fooled. Those are all just perpetuating the concentration of power and wealth, in my opinion. The only way we can really move forward in an equitable way is to try to get to a circulation, what we call a donut economy, in my opinion, that can truly build more resilient economies where every single child, starting from places like New York City, don't have to be pitted against each other and can go to a decent high school no matter